At 8:30 on a chilly October night, under glowing string lights and luxury heaters, the richest table at the Sterling Oaks restaurant celebrated a $200 million land deal with flowing champagne and careless laughter. At the center of it all sat Gregory Hamilton, powerful, untouchable, trapped in a $12,000 carbon fiber wheelchair that hadn't left his side in 6 weeks. Only 5 feet away, hidden beyond the ivy and shadows near a trash dumpster, stood a barefoot 9-year-old homeless boy named Miles Underwood. His jacket was torn, his feet blue from cold, his ribs showing through fabric too thin for October. 30 minutes earlier, hunger had led him to that dumpster. What he found didn't just change his night, it rewrote the future of everyone watching. Inside the trash, among stained napkins and wine boxes, lay torn copies of a medical journal. One article caught his eye: acute sciatic nerve entrapment, emergency release protocol. Miles didn't skim it. He absorbed it in one read, every word, every diagram, everything permanent. That was his gift, photographic memory. The gift no teacher had left alive to protect. As Hamilton shifted uncomfortably at his table, rubbing his left leg in hidden agony, Miles saw the signs instantly: locked muscles, rotated foot, mounting paralysis. The article he just memorized described it perfectly. Then the moment hit. Hamilton's fork crashed to the plate. His leg froze completely. Panic exploded across the luxury patio. "Stroke!" someone shouted. "Call an ambulance!" Phones came out. Fear cut through champagne, and from the darkness beyond the railing a small voice stepped forward. "Sir, I can fix your leg." Laughter followed, then cruelty. "Get this dirty black kid away from my table before he steals something or gives us all a disease." The words hit harder than any punch. Cameras rolled. Security closed in. But the child didn't retreat. He stood shaking, carrying 51 stolen pages of medical knowledge and the memory of a dying mother no one had listened to. And with the whole world watching, the boy accepted a $1 million challenge that would either make him disappear forever or make history. 8 months earlier, Miles had still slept in a real bed beside his mother, Rebecca Underwood. She worked double shifts. She skipped meals so he wouldn't. When she collapsed in an emergency room waiting area with fever rising and infection spreading, she kept repeating the same sentence for 6 hours straight. "Something is really wrong, please, someone listen." No one did. Insurance questions came first. Clipboard forms came next. By the time they took her inside, the infection had entered her bloodstream. Sepsis. $85 worth of antibiotics given in time would have saved her life. Miles learned that later. He learned everything later. After her death, the bridge at mile 34 became his address. Hunger became routine. Cold became normal. And medicine became his obsession. He watched hospital residents through 4th-floor windows at night, mimicking their hand movements on his own body. He dug through recycling bins for torn textbooks and journals. He memorized every word he found. 51 full medical pages lived in his mind by the night he met Hamilton, and all of it was born from grief. On that patio, as Hamilton screamed in pain and arrogance tangled with fear, Miles saw his mother all over again, a patient nobody believed until disaster arrived. When Hamilton mocked him with the $1 million challenge and promised juvenile detention if he failed, the world leaned in for entertainment. But for Miles, this wasn't about money. This was about proving that listening mattered. That knowledge mattered. That invisibility didn't mean useless. When Hamilton finally allowed him through the rail, the 9-year-old washed his hands like a surgeon, cold water and shaking fingers, while 40 adults fell silent around him. The child knelt beside a billionaire's paralyzed leg with nothing but memory and courage guiding his hands. And as security prepared for an arrest instead of a miracle, Miles whispered the words burned into his mind. 15 to 30 seconds, sustained pressure, lateral angle, instant release. What happened next would be remembered far beyond that patio. At exactly 8:48 p.m., Miles pressed both thumbs into the trigger point beneath Hamilton's hip with every ounce of his tiny body weight. The muscle beneath his hands felt like stone. Hamilton screamed as pain surged sharper than anything he'd felt in months. People counted aloud without realizing it, 1, 2, 3, as if the entire patio had synchronized with the child's heartbeat. Sweat poured down Hamilton's face despite the cold night air. At second 16, everyone held their breath. At second 18, the muscle released. A deep internal pop cracked through the silence. Hamilton's body snapped backward as the nerve freed itself instantly. The pain vanished completely. "I can feel my leg," he whispered. In disbelief, Hamilton wiggled his toes, then his foot, then his entire leg, and for the first time in 6 weeks he stood up from his wheelchair without pain, without assistance, without fear. The patio erupted. Strangers screamed. Champagne toppled. Phones captured the moment from every angle. Victoria, one of the dinner guests, crushed Miles in a sobbing hug. And Hamilton, the man who had just called him trash, dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around the shaking boy. "You gave me my life back," he cried through tears. 18 seconds. The millionaire stood again before everyone. The wheelchair sat empty beside the table like a discarded prophecy. With trembling hands, Hamilton wrote a check for $1 million in front of the entire crowd and held it out to Miles. "Take it. You earned it." 3 million people were already watching online. News vans screamed into the parking lot. Cameras zoomed in on the check hovering inches from the hands of a barefoot child who hadn't eaten a real meal in days. And that's when Miles surprised everyone again. He didn't reach for the money. He looked at Hamilton, then at the cameras, and softly said, "I didn't do it for money. I did it because when my mom was dying, nobody listened." Silence crushed the patio heavier than any applause ever could. When Miles said he didn't want the money, the world froze. Reporters pushed closer. Voices trembled. Hamilton lowered the check slowly like a man waking from a dream. "Then tell me what you want," he said, broken, and the boy answered with the smallest, bravest sentence imaginable. "I want to learn for real. I want to become a doctor so nobody's mom ever has to die unheard." That single request changed everything. Within minutes, Hamilton arranged a full scholarship to one of the best preparatory schools in Philadelphia. That same night, he secured a fully furnished apartment. He created a $2 million education trust that would carry Miles through medical school and beyond. But then came the revelation that shattered Hamilton completely. He told the truth about his own father, a hospital janitor who had taught himself medicine by reading discarded journals at night, but died unnoticed by the system. "Tonight," Hamilton whispered through tears, "you became the doctor my father never got to be." The boy who had slept beneath a bridge hours earlier suddenly stood at the center of national headlines. Doctors confirmed the procedure's accuracy. Specialists confirmed the diagnosis. Viral videos confirmed the impossible. The homeless child had outperformed permanent predictions using nothing but discarded science and a determined mind. Within weeks, the Rebecca Underwood Memorial Clinic opened near Mile 34, dedicated to fast diagnosis for underserved patients. The very place where Miles' mother had waited her final hours unheard. And for the first time since losing her, Miles slept in a real bed with heat, safety, and walls that didn't leak shadows. The $1 million check had been torn apart, not rejected, but replaced with something far more rare, a future that couldn't be taken away. 3 months later, Miles walked into his new school wearing a uniform that finally fit. For the first time in 8 months, he didn't feel cold. He didn't feel watched. He felt normal. Teachers saw more than brilliance, they saw precision. Not only could he recall information, he could apply it instantly. By age 10, he was presenting at hospital conferences. By 11, he assisted in supervised diagnostics at the clinic named after his mother. Every Saturday, without fail, he returned to the bridge at mile 34 where everything began. Not to sleep, but to teach. Children who lived the same life he once did now sat in a circle around him, learning first aid, anatomy, observation, and something more important, self-worth. When one boy asked him why he came back if he didn't have to, Miles answered simply, "Because someone finally saw me when I was invisible. Now it's my job to see you." Years passed. The scholarship he inspired lifted dozens of other children from the same uncertainty he survived. The clinic prevented hundreds of deaths caused by delayed diagnosis. And every time Hamilton walked past his abandoned wheelchair stored in his office, he remembered the night a 9-year-old with no shoes rewrote everything he thought he understood about power, intelligence, and worth. What the world called a miracle, Miles simply called listening. The stories from the clinic grew, patients saved in minutes instead of hours, mothers hearing good news instead of apologies, children living because someone paid attention in time. Hamilton funded more than buildings after that night. He funded belief. He testified to Congress on emergency response reform. He built scholarships nationwide for invisible genius, and he never once introduced Miles as the homeless boy. He only said, "This is the doctor who saved my life before he even became." When Miles turned 12, he asked Hamilton a single question. "What happens when I get older and I'm not cute anymore? Will people still want to listen?" Hamilton answered without hesitation, "They will listen because you taught them how." The truth was undeniable. That night had shifted something in society's collective imagination. People who once looked at street children as background noise now wondered what genius they had been ignoring. And all of it began because one child refused to be silent when the world told him to be. On the anniversary of the 18-second miracle, Miles stood once again on the Sterling Oaks patio, this time wearing a clean suit, standing beside Hamilton as they unveiled a plaque where the night had unfolded. It read, "Because seconds matter." Below it, Rebecca Underwood Memorial Initiative. The same lights glowed. The same rail stood firm, but the world now knew what could rise from shadows. That night had not been about a billionaire learning to walk again. It had been about a child being allowed to stand at all. As the crowd applauded, Miles didn't look at the plaque. He looked toward the fence where he had once stood shivering with knowledge nobody wanted. And for just a second, the past and present aligned like folded time. Then he turned and stepped forward into the future he had carved with 2 thumbs and 18 unstoppable seconds. Some miracles roar, others whisper. This one counted quietly to 18 and changed lives forever. It reminded the world that genius does not wear uniforms, that brilliance does not ask permission, and that sometimes the smallest hands carry the biggest answers. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that potential hides in the places we least expect, then don't let it stop here. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this story with someone who still believes the world only listens to power. Because somewhere tonight, another child is watching through a window, waiting for someone to listen.